on Youth podcast. Today we're going to be discussing children born into a dual culture household, or also raising a child who happens to be dual culture. We have our regular co-host with me today. We have Yolanda Robertson Green.
Hi everyone.
Raquel McKee.
Hi.
Angela Ifanaja.
Hello.
And Calanthia Lowenthal. Did I get that right?
No.
It's alright, yeah.
Lilburn. And Calanthia Lilburn. Nice to meet you, Calanthia. Welcome.
Thank you.
Excellent. So we're just going to go right into it, and we're going to ask Calanthia to share with us her personal experiences in terms of what it was like being a dual culture person in Northern Ireland. First of all, what brought you to Northern Ireland if you're not from Northern Ireland, and what was it like growing up as a dual culture person?
So what brought us to Northern Ireland? It's actually really uneventful as to why we're here. You know, my dad's from Barbados, my mom's from England, and you know, they just they didn't want to live in England. You know, going back to Barbados wasn't an option at the time, so it was like, well, where else do we like? And we're like, do you know what? We like Ireland. We like the outdoors. We like nature and stuff. So, like, that is literally why we're here. And the education system. You know, my dad's really into education. So he was like, yep, that'll do us. And that's exactly why we're here.
Fantastic.
Okay.
It's not that eventful.
And was it a long time ago?
When was it? Yeah.
Oh, man. Now. I came when
Well,
I was...
eight-
I had to...
well,
Yeah,
eight-
I know.
Trying to work out how old you are.
It's okay. I think P3. So how was it?
Oh,
What was
wow.
I? P3. So it's been a long time. Hear the accent.
Yeah.
It's been a very long time, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I landed here in P3. And kind of being here has been like a mixed experience, kind of like myself. It's been great. You know, like I have some fantastic friends, some really amazing people that have stood by me. But at the same time, it's been really like socially isolating. Do you know, like when I arrived here, there was no one. And you know, like my parents, they picked, you know, like a small village in the middle of nowhere, right? It's like, yeah, that's a good idea. No. I mean, it was a lovely village and I really, really enjoyed, you know, like, I don't even want to name the village now. It was a lovely village, but at the same time, you know, like here was my dad who was black and my mom who was white, and then there were like five children, you know, like stepping stones, mixed race, you know, like everyone knew who we were. Like my mom like dressed us all in like matching outfits, you know, like, just to make us,
Just to be sure she could find you.
Right. Absolutely. Like I remember winter time we had like the little Parker jackets, you know, like with the fur around, so like 5 children were like just like freezing in the winter time. So like it was hard from that perspective because we were in like this small village. Nobody had ever like really encountered mixed race or black. So you know, like you would have like people, you know, like wanting to touch your hair, you know, like my mom was like side-eyeing, you know, like what are you doing, you know, just to pack that in right now. You know, and so
But that's actually funny because I thought like that would have been the Caribbean mom to give that side eye, and not your mom being from England or white.
my mom takes no nonsense.
All right.
She doesn't suffer fools, darling.
But it's interesting too because that would have been a thing back home in the Caribbean, that when you go to school with your hair done just so, make sure you come back with it done just so.
Yeah, but that would have been like us trying to undo it to put a more big girl hairstyle. It would not have been like for fear that someone was going to touch our hair.
No, it wasn't.
It probably would have been a different thing, I suppose.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I don't know what it was. My mom was excellent at doing hair. I mean, she can cane roll with the best of them. My I know, that's a shout out to my mom. Okay. Yeah. She said she had 3 girls as well, you know, like, so it was, you know.
By the time the third one came along, she figured it out.
She had it down pat on number 1. Yes.
Wow.
She knew what she was doing. You know, like my aunts used to be like, girl,
You
got this going on.
Yeah, you're good. So like we were always, you know, like hair was done to perfection. You weren't allowed to mess it because it took her a whole day to get 3 heads of hair done.
Yes.
You know, like so you know, like wear your scarf, you know, like at night and stuff. And that was another thing when you went to sleepovers and you were like tying a scarf on your head and people are like,
what are you doing? What
is going on?
And that's like a black girl's thing, isn't it? But I kind of really want to know, like, you know, obviously for us it probably will be different and we'll talk about our own experiences bringing children here. I suppose I kind of want to know what your dad was saying or what your dad was like during all of this typical Bajan man.
My dad was all about education.
Right.
I mean, I just had to go to school. That was my sole mission in life. That was it. You know, like none of this. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. Go to school, get an education, get to university. You know, like just do it. And I did all of that. You know, like, and he is immensely proud of me. You know, like, but yeah. So that was him. He worked incredibly hard. You know, like to make sure that we went to school. So yeah, that was pretty much him.
I suppose. Sorry, Tessa. I suppose that might be something within the Caribbean we're taught that, look, listen, without an education, you go nowhere in life. Yeah. So that might have been one of the values, perhaps, as a Caribbean fan. And that's no slight to perhaps Northern Irish or English people, because it's probably the same value.
But there was no state pension. Well, state pension. There was no, dole. There was no opportunities for you if you didn't have work. So.
You mean like back in the Caribbean?
In the Caribbean,
Or no education.
So
100%.
you have to get the education and get a job. Straight up.
I think it's an immigrant thing, not just Caribbean. I think it's an immigrant thing when you move to another country. Education, because they see that as a way of advancement. So I think a lot of immigrant parents and immigrant children can identify with that. Make sure you get the education, get a good job.
And then everything else after.
That's it.
Yeah. But you said something that's interesting to me in terms of, since we're talking about dual culture, because not only do you come from like an interracial family and you're a multiracial family in a small village here, but coming from England to Northern Ireland, what was that like? Because I know in England they have a bit more diversity, and especially back then would have had a bit more diversity compared to living in a little village here in England.
I mean, we left when we were small, so what I knew of diversity was my entire family, like my grandma, like she's now back in Barbados, like all my cousins, like my aunts, my uncles, that was the extent. Going down Peckham Market, like that was, like what I knew. Right?
Shout out to Peckham Market.
Right, walking down, like Electric Avenue and all those places that you hear about that I didn't realize I'd even been to until, like they were like, oh, you were there. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. But it was more to do with the fact that it was my family that I had the relationship with. So whenever we left then, we didn't have family. It was literally just my dad, my mum and us. Right. And the contrast then was kind of like, oh my word. I mean, like there's nobody. Anybody want to be my friend today?
Did you find that it helped coming from like like a big family, like having all these other siblings? Then was it easier to transition because you could commiserate with them about certain things?
I think. Do you know what? I don't think that we actually really talked about it, about the loneliness or about the isolation that you felt. And we have since talked about it, how we did feel, but at the time we never did. It was just kind of like, you just go to school and you get your education and that's it. And I did have good friends, I had a best friend in primary school. So I was okay from that respect. I think I could only count maybe a handful of times that there was like overt racism. Like one time primary school we had gone, it was a trip. I don't know why we were going to Dublin on this trip. I can't remember why we were going. But what I do remember is this incident in the shop. So like my mum had given me money. It wasn't that much money, but it was money nevertheless. I always like to buy her something whenever we're going out somewhere. I know, I'm so good, right? Yeah. So we were in the shop. There was me and my friends, and they were looking at stuff. I was looking at stuff, and then the shopkeeper just, when someone's looking at you. Yeah. And I was just like, okay. And I walked off to be with my friends, and she climbed up these stairs inside of the shop, and I looked up at her. And she mouthed to the other shopkeeper, and then did this, keep an eye on her. And at that point, this was the first ever real, and I was like, hang on a minute, I've got money. That was my first thing, was like, I got money, it's okay, I've got money. And plus, I don't like anything here anyway, so I'm not getting it. But, there was that feeling of, there's difference here. You've pointed me out in a group of friends. Yeah. Do you know, that stuck with me. That's always stuck with me. Can't remember why I was in Dublin, but that moment really just was like, okay, I'm different. I'm definitely different.
I hope you've gone back to Dublin many a time.
It's very different.
I know.
I know.
But I suppose just as you're talking, I'm really curious because I'm going to really talk about the difference and the crisis I felt when I came here about food crisis. And I know we've mentioned that in a previous podcast when we talked about culture and things like that. But I just want to know who really cooked in the house and
My
what
dad.
was the
Now, my mom is a good cook. I don't.
Yes.
But my dad was a chef by profession.
Oh.
I know, right? Yeah.
no flying fish?
Right. Oh my word.
But how
Lion fish
how did
cutters.
he cope with trying to reproduce Bajan dishes at the time? Because I'm pretty sure the Omer Road shop that we know today is not there. Was not there.
Do you know what? I don't know. Well, we never had flying fish, but fish, played an important part of the diet. It was always curry rice and peas. Curry rice and peas. Like every occasion, there was curry rice and peas. There was like macaroni pies and everything.
Yes.
Oh my gosh! I mean,
plantain.
when we could find it, when we could find it, that was there. Like Christmases were a massive occasion. My dad still to this day. We had a barbecue the other day, and I mean, I'm just like, he said, "Bring food," and I'm like, "I'm not bringing food. I'm not going to bring food." Do you know why? Because you already have made too much. So we arrived there, and like 4 times he had to put the barbecue on because there was so much food. Like who are you feeding for? So there was plenty of food, plenty of fried chicken, plenty of barbecue. I mean, he's a good cook.
Honestly, I'm gonna say it probably is another Caribbean thing because my grandmother, and I cringe saying this, my grandmother used to say, "Cook in case anybody passed by." There's always too much food.
Retention.
Is
It's
it?
an African retention.
It's that hospitality.
Yes.
Actually, I wonder whether in your home, because obviously your mum being English and your dad being Bajan, was there a bit of a clash of cultures yet there? Well, obviously there would have been in some ways, but just in terms of what we just said now,
Hospitality and food.
Yeah, would there have been maybe your dad with a bit more? Yeah, everybody, and was your mum a bit more reserved? Just understanding those dynamics there.
I think my mom is pretty outgoing as well. Like I think possibly she had 5 kids, so I mean there was always like
Always feeding the masses anyway.
like literally all the little lunches lined up, like all the uniforms and so. Saying that though, like we helped out. Like my dad was very much into like the eldest has a lot of responsibility and you do what the eldest says. Like and you will help out at home. No matter what, you will help out. You're a part of the family. So, and my mom kept a tight ship as well. she was, So, I mean, clash of cultures, not to my recollection. I mean, perhaps maybe when I wasn't listening, but from what I remember, I don't think that there was a clash of cultures in that because they both were. I remember the like Halloween parties that they used to throw. Oh my word! Like all the neighbors, like the house was decorated from head to toe. Like, and then we'd be upstairs because we weren't allowed, down after bewitching hour. The big people party. So we'd have like all the sweets and the cakes and the biscuits and everything upstairs. And our sole responsibility was just stay upstairs. Have some fun. Here's all the movies and stuff, etc. And we'd eventually, pass out, fall asleep, and mum would come up, like every so often to check on us and all, they were great memories, they really were great memories. They were both very hospitable.
Really good.
Do you have any maybe positive memories or any memories at all of perhaps maybe when you were at school or children in your neighborhood in terms of cultural exchanges? Like, did you have any conversations with any of your neighborhood friends or anyone in school about your culture or anything like that?
That's where it becomes really tricky. Like for me, especially in terms of my identity and where I felt really quite invalidated. And I wish I had known, that it was okay to feel everything that I was feeling.
Right.
I think if I could teach anybody, it would be it's okay to actually feel white as much as black and everything else in between, because that's exactly what you are. But at that time when I was really young and I didn't have that information. So like, for example, I remember the first black book, shall we say, that was ever put down in front of me at school, and I picked it up and it was like Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. And I picked it up and I got really excited. I was like, oh my word, there's like a black person on the front cover. And I'm looking around going, does everybody see this?
You kind of want to hold it like this,
right? Literally, I was so excited, and then I turned the book around and I looked at the blurb, and
you're like,
I was like, oh man, we're still there.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just going to talk about like black people in the sense of like victimhood. And I was deflated. When I read the blurb, I was really deflated. I thought, okay, Calanthia, you know, like I always do this with myself, you know, like, come on, get that path, find that positivity somewhere. So, you know, I decided that a black book, all right, it's about, you know, black victimhood. It's got to be better than no black book at all. So I decided to stick with the conversations. So whenever that book was placed in front of us and we'd finished reading like chapter 1, we, you know, had the little table discussions and stuff. So, you know, like first person nudged me and was like, is your mom, you know, like, or is your dad a slave? I was like, no. Granny a slave? No, still no. You know, like, is your dad like black? And I'm like, what is black? I don't know. What is this black?
What does that mean?
I don't know. You know, like, but you know what? I tried to stick with my active determination. Was like, okay, we have got to have these conversations. So I answered their question. No slave. Black. You're gonna have to educate me there. You know, like, I don't really know what this is. I'm like, just someone who's very black. And I'm like, it's very black. I know my dad's just my dad. You know, like,
I don't know.
Why know? And then the magic question happens. So, what are you? So I said, I'm mixed race. I'm both black and white. And crazy flash, they were like, well, you look black, so you have to be black.
Oh boy.
And I was like, well, I don't actually think, you know, but I didn't know any better, so it was just kind of like, oh, well, maybe I do have to be black, you know, like, because this is what you're telling me, you know, like, I don't know. And I tried to say, look, you know, like, I've got as much white culture as I have black culture, you know, my mom's white and my dad, you know, but you can be black Irish. You know, you got the accent, so it's okay. And I was like, no one's listening to me. And then I kept quiet. Then, you know, like, silence was my resilience. I was just like, okay, well, you know, like, you're not listening to me. So then the second novel to ever come my way in school was To Kill a Mockingbird, right? So again, it comes in front of me on the table, and I'm like, what is this? What is this? Right? But there was, you know, like, I was older this time, so there was definitely a difference in the room. You know, as we were reading the back of the book, you could almost feel the silence. Do you know, it was like, okay, this is different this time. No one's asking any questions. You know, like, it's just, we're not really going to talk about race at all. So, and one thing in particular out of that book was page 177.
Oh my God, you remember the page number?
Right? So this was the part where they talked about mixed race people. And the teacher who was reading at the time, I remember, who just like speeding up, or in my mind she was speeding up, you know, where it said that mixed race people don't belong anywhere. Do you know, white people don't want them because they're, you know, like, too black people don't want them because they're too white. And then silence. And I was just like, okay then. Well, that's that then. You know, like, I don't belong anywhere.
Not funny in any way at all. So,
what kind of conversations do you have when you've had that experience and you go back home? How is that reset for you?
Do you know what? I stayed quiet. I stayed really quiet, because in my head it was like, if I had this discussion with my mom who's white, you know, like, or if I had this
offend him.
Do you know, and I've already been told, well, nobody really cares anyway, you know, like.
Now, the question I want to throw in there is, how does that reset your thinking as a parent?
As a parent, I am determined to make sure that my kids identify however they want. You know, I am always banging on about, you know, the continuum of biracial identity. You know, like, my daughter is like, how old is she? Mom. You know, like, yes. She's like, yeah.
Sure they get it?
I made on my Instagram, I made an actual post, and I'm like, look, love, look what Mom's done just for you. Now tell me about the continuum of biracial identity. I want them to know that it is, you know, completely okay to be as much white as it is to be as much black, to be everything in between, or even just to, you know what, I'm just going to identify as human. And that changes the fluidity of, you know, like, race, mixed race, and, you know, it's dynamic. It doesn't stay still. that's what I want them to know. I want them to know that they are people, you know, like that they have a voice and they have an identity, because when they find their identity, when they know who they are, that's where their self-esteem, etc. comes from. That's when they become, you know, like resilient, you know, they're not going to fall for everything because they know who they are. So that is what I pass on to them.
I think it's a good time for us, perhaps, as you know, members on the panel, to share our own experience having come to Northern Ireland, perhaps with a fully blown black family and entering into dual culture. It's certainly going to be different for us, I suppose, and maybe Raquel has a different experience. But for me, I obviously can't say my experience is yours, and hats off to you. You've done well. I mean, for me, I came here when my children were grown, more or less. They were 12, 10. So they were old enough, and we're a fully blown black family. And suppose for me, coming into Northern Ireland, the concern was really around discipline. What am I going to be able to do now? Am I going to be able to
discipline your child
the way the Caribbean do? And then the children learn very quickly, because obviously my boys would have picked up in school, okay, there's no more use of that belt or anything. Not that I use the belt, but they picked that up. So that was one of the concerns of me. And so I'm sure, like you talked about before, your mom and I, suppose we reverted to using the eye, the look. You know, we've talked about that before, I suppose, even when we did culture. And just one more thing for me coming here as a black family with my children, it was more worrying about them finding friends that they could identify with or hang out with and be real with. Because honestly, for me, I did not care. I was already a grown woman, and ain't nobody gonna bully me, or I'm too... Can't bully a bully. Put it that way. So I wasn't worried. I'm more worried about my boys. Do you know what I mean? But sure, yeah.
I think that's probably a parent thing all over the world, that we worry about our kids. But I think once there is this dual culture in the mix, you get even more concerned and even more worried, because you know that there is this potential of isolation, that, you know, one side and the other side might not both be prepared to accept this person. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was gonna bring Angela in, because I was gonna say not only just dual culture of interracial, but also dual culture of your home culture.
Well, that's what I was referring to, actually.
The culture of the parents, as opposed to the culture of the children who are born here. So I was going to ask Angela, how do you balance helping your children to maintain their Nigerian identity while also, you know, being free to express their Northern Irish identity?
Yeah, I suppose I myself was raised in a dual culture. Okay. In that when we came over, I was born in Nigeria, but when we came over I was still very young, so I grew up in England. And there was always that balancing act and that tension between remembering, you know, my tradition, my culture, the language and all of that, and being raised, being raised in an environment where things are very, very different. So I grew up with that. So I think in some ways I understood the challenges that my children would have to face. But there's an additional element, because when we came over from England, my first child was 2.5. And so she, for the short time that she'd been in England, had a sense of, I'm from England. To this day, if you ask her, she'll say, my sisters were born here, they're from here. I'm from England.
Interestingly,
on top of the Nigerian.
Yes.
It's so funny, because we're balancing this, right? Yeah. But I think that the biggest challenge is where I know that there's certain values that we have, right? So hospitality, respect.
Yes.
Yeah.
All of those things that I want you to imbibe, right? Respect for elders and all of that. And there's a natural, when you meet people, you know, it's, you gotta call them auntie, or I don't tell them that.
Yeah.
But they know that I can't call this person by name.
By the first name.
And that's
it's
fine
like,
when they're dealing with black people.
Yes.
But
then when you
they're
get to
dealing with white
what
people,
do I do?
our neighbors, our friends, what do I because if I call her auntie, she's gonna think it's weird.
You're wearing it.
So there's that always, you know, there's always that, you know, in it. But it's, I would love them. The struggle right now is to get them to understand our language and speak the language. I totally failed on that so far. But I'm determined to turn it around. Because you kind of have to start from a young age. So you know, it's hard. But I'm determined we're gonna crack.
It's interesting what you're saying there, because I have two sons who were born in England, and one of them is I was born in London. Okay? I was born in London. You two might have been born here, but I was born in London. And he's very, very clear about that. And when everybody else is cheering, Northern Ireland, go, he's like, England.
Tell him to keep quiet.
And we're like, but he's like, go England.
I mean, I know we're probably gonna have another guest soon, and I just want to throw something here quickly, if you don't mind, Tassa. I suppose I hear we were talking about discipline, and for me, the broader picture, when I first came here from the Caribbean, having had a profession as a teacher in the Caribbean, I came with one resolution, and it was based on a very simple fact. I was not gonna be a teacher here because in my home country, when I enter the classroom as a teacher, the children stand to greet you. Yeah. And if that does not happen in Northern Ireland, and if I'm going to go into school where the things I'm not used to, the makeup, the hairstyle, that I felt was not part of what I just thought teaching is not going to be for me because I might get myself in a bit of trouble. So I didn't want to do that. And I suppose just to add, I know that we're talking about the different layers of perhaps, you know, being a part of a dual culture. Within Northern Ireland, we have to recognize, we don't have anybody here as a guest to speak to that today, but we have to recognize that there's a dual culture in terms of perhaps being Protestant versus Catholic, and maybe how that might play out itself. But sure, I know a lot of our listeners might have comments about that, but yeah, I mean, that's just my take on things.
Yeah, I have to say, with my children, it has been quite interesting, the cultural rubs that come. One of them being that I'm very cold-blooded. I feel the breeze for everything. So I am constantly, shut the door. And my husband,
they walk.
Open the door. I'm roasting in here. And it's open the door, shut the door, open the door. And it's all, you know, all sorts of little things like that.
That's a good segue about closing the door and opening the door. We're going to open our door to the next one.
I see what you did. I see what you did. Yeah.
Yes, we've been waiting patiently. We had a good chat with you, Calanthia.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
It
much.
was brilliant. Thank you, Calanthia.
And joining us, we're going to have Natalia Ricketts.
No pressure.
Hello. Who's listening as well, because we do have audiences who are watching and some who are listening. Natalia is from a mixed race background.
Yeah.
And so we had Calanthia, who's given her experience when she was growing up, you know, so a little while ago.
And as a parent.
And as a parent as well. So we wanted to have a young person, you know, present day, who's dual culture as well, and to find out like what your experiences were growing up. So just for the people who are listening and watching, can you just give us a bit about your background?
Well, I grew up in Belfast. My mom is from Ballymena in Northern Ireland, and my dad is from Jamaica. So, yeah. And yeah, so half my family lives in Jamaica and the other half lives in Ballymena, so two very different things.
Just a little bit different,
Kind of. We did.
I just rather jump right in, Natalia, and ask you, please, don't favor any of them, or which of the food you like best?
Well, I think there's a pretty obvious answer there. It would have to be definitely the Jamaican food. Yeah.
I hope mom's not listening.
She is.
No dinner tonight.
Oh dear.
Yeah, for the listening audience, Natalia is a wee baby today, wee pet. She's not an Irish language. Natalia is a young person, but her mom and dad has given full permission for her to be here today, guys.
Yes, I have.
Full support of this as well. Natalia, what was it like growing up with, you know, parents from two different backgrounds, not just race but culture as well? Did you have any fun experiences or fun memories growing up where the cultures clashed or anything like that you can pinpoint or remember?
Well, it was very different growing up like that. Obviously, my parents were very different in raising me, and they had different like ways to raise me. I would say that my dad is definitely more strict than my mum. Coming from Jamaica, and the way they discipline their children is very different over here. I feel like get away with a lot more with my mum maybe, and yeah, so like certain things.
You better not admit that.
Yeah, I know. If my dad's listening.
Don't listen.
Yeah, but so like it would be more like my dad would be very focused on like just me getting great grades, like straight A's all the time, and you know, just doing well, getting into a good school, and just like going to university, which I haven't got to yet, but so like if I would ever have a report that would be a bit not as good, I would definitely show that to my mum first rather than my dad.
And she tried to smooth it over
again. Yeah. But yeah, that was definitely different. And
I'm not even gonna ask Natalia. Please, I hope he's not listening. I'm not even gonna ask what your dad's gonna be like when you start dating. He's probably gonna ask, can I talk to that person first?
They're gonna be dead.
Well, I must just own up here, right?
Dear.
Because from the first day when I had my boys, and people say, "Oh, they're so cute. He's gonna be a heartthrob when he grows up." I said, "Yes, I'm practicing the face." And I said, when she comes to the door, it will be this. Who you want?
Yeah, I'll probably have to wait a while before bringing them to my dad. Yeah.
I swear this is funny because my son would kill me. I remember the first time one of my boys said, "Mom, can I bring a friend over?" I says, "Boy or girl?" He says, "Girl," and I go like, "Okay, all right, no problem." The first time the girl came through the door, I says, "All right, make sure all the doors stay open." No doors to be closed. And the girl was like, because the girl's local, and she was like,
probably terrifying.
Natalia, saying as maybe when you would have been in like primary school at a different time from like a previous guest, would you say that the diversity is different? Would you think was your school experience more diverse? Are there other mixed race kids at your school or more black children at your school, so it's not so shocking when people see a mixed race person like yourself?
Well, I'd say it's probably more diverse now in Northern Ireland, but still not enough. But you know, in school I would definitely be like one of the only ones, if not the only, like part black person. So that was very different, just like growing up with like everyone around me being white, all my friends, they didn't really understand that sort of like part of me, and you know, they would always be like curious and asking questions. And yeah, in primary school, like it was different, especially like having the hair that I do, which is very different to other people that I'd be friends with. Like they would always ask me questions about like how long did it take to get done, and like just like touching my hair and stuff. Yeah.
But do you mind that? Or you're
do
they ask permission, or do they just touch your hair?
Depends. Some people ask permission, but some people just go for like even random people on the street would just be like come up to me behind me and touch my hair, and I'd be like, I don't know you. But yeah. So, but also it would be like, there was a few like instances in like primary school when like people would be like racist to me and stuff, and so yeah, that was like hard to deal with. Yeah, it's alright. And like my school wouldn't really know how to deal with that either, so I would tell them and they'd just be like, oh, like
what's the procedure when something like that happens? Do you have to tell the teacher, or do you go straight to the principal? What happens if someone says something racist to you or does something racist?
Well, what I did was I told the teacher, and the teacher really didn't do anything. And when I told my dad, he was not happy.
Marching down there.
Yeah, he pretty much marched down to school, told the principal, and made sure that there was consequences for the person. So I think they got like suspended or something, I don't know.
I have to admit, Natalia, that's probably me right there.
Yeah.
My son used to be like, Mom, please do not come over to my school. I'd be like, no, please tell me the name of the boy or the girl. That's it.
Yeah, every time I would see them in the corridors, I'd be like,
But how have you been to Jamaica though? I know you've been with your dad. What was that like?
Yes, I went when I was like 2.5, so don't really remember that. I also went like in P7, so I do remember that. It was really good.
Did you find a very marked difference between the culture here and the culture in Jamaica?
Yeah, definitely. Very big difference. Yeah. Well, first of all, the food when I went there, like we stayed with my granny,
and my uncles and aunties and cousins, and the food was so good. It was amazing. My granny is an amazing cook.
Oh,
and
bless.
yeah,
My granny too.
yeah. So that was amazing, and obviously the weather is a lot hotter.
Of course.
Yeah.
Although I'm not used to that, so it's not really a plus for me because I get too warm.
Yeah.
And I'm used to sort of 20 degrees in here, but and also lots of mosquitoes everywhere biting me. Like, came in with about 50 bites, and my granny would just tell me not to scratch them. But
Do you have allergic reactions? Because my son does.
no, I don't know. Like, but they were really itchy and all over me. It was awful.
I wonder though. I just wonder, when you did go over to Jamaica, did you have a sense of I belong here, or did you feel different? How did you
Definitely
feel
out
there?
of place.
Really?
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah, because obviously, like, I've grown up here all my life, so like, I didn't really. Well, I didn't. It's not like I didn't feel like I fit in. I just like felt like it was very. It's like a shock. Like, it was very different. Yeah, just the way they are there is different, and yeah, my family over there is a lot different from the family I have over here, so you sort of have to adapt to that, and it's very different from seeing like white people everywhere here to like seeing black people everywhere. So both places feel like
when we go to England.
yeah.
And even in Jamaican language, we will have to say the Jamaican not ordinary.
Yeah.
So even for me, it was a culture shock going there.
Yeah.
So I can imagine.
But one of the things that I'm interested in how you handled was the language thing, because I know when my sons go home to Jamaica, they do not speak to the people, and they sit in shock when people speak to them, because somebody will say, "You want one more with that?" And they're like, "Mom?" And I'm saying, "Yes or no? You want one more with that or not?" What?
Yeah.
Because of course it's not just that they're speaking in Jamaican, it's the
as
speed at
well.
which they're
Yeah.
just can't keep up.
Yeah, well, obviously my dad speaks sort of like Jamaican slang patois, and so I'm used to that.
Well, you have to say something, Natalia.
Yeah.
You have to
Go
say
on,
something.
go on.
No, I put me on the spot there. No. So like I wouldn't really speak it myself, but like I can pick up on what they're saying.
What they're saying,
Most of the time when they're not speaking too quickly,
Yeah.
I can pick up what they're saying.
Okay, when you're leaving, you have to say little more. You have to say
Yeah.
for the Jamaican fans.
Yeah.
You know, when you're when people normally ask about, you know, how you feel about your dual culture or your dual race or something like that, sometimes people might be thinking of the negatives, but what do you think are some of the positive aspects of benefiting from two cultures, whether the Jamaican and the Northern Irish, or whether the black or whether the white? What are some of the positive things that you like about having both?
Well, as I've sort of become a teenager now, like I feel like everyone's a bit more like interested in my culture and like finding out about it. So like I'd be able to tell them about it, and like they'd be interested in like trying the food or like going to culture night with me or some events and stuff, which is great. And like interest, they always like are like telling me like, "Oh, I was listening to reggae the other day." And I'm like, that's great. Yeah. So it's quite good to have like something different to like share with your friends and like sort of educate them on like your culture.
Excellent.
Proper ambassador you are.
One of the things that my boys, I think, have benefited from in having both sides is the resilience, because automatically, because you are kind of a bit of this and a bit of that, you have to kind of be able to straddle both sides of two different cultures, and you have to let some things wash off you, and you have to just absorb certain other things, and it builds a level of resilience in you that allows you to be able to deal with a lot of different circumstances and situations. So
And speaking of that, Natalia, how would you think having this identity helps you, like with your personality, with your day-to-day life? Like how has being a dual culture person aided you in just your day-to-day life?
Well,
Like for example, like the resilience Raquel spoke about. Do you find that it's easier to brush certain things off, or do you find that you're more what's the word I'm looking for? You're more sensitive to certain things, or not at all, or it doesn't affect you at all? You just go about your day-to-day and you're just you.
well, I wouldn't say I'm like sensitive to things. I sort of just like brush things off mostly. But it's sort of good to be able to like adapt to both cultures. So like be able to hang out with like a group of Northern Irish people, and then also hang out with a group of like people from other cultures as well. So yeah, I think
that's good. You're the bridge. Bridge that gap. Yeah.
Do you feel it makes you more understanding of different sort of perspectives and where people are coming from?
Yeah, like even if someone's not even from Jamaica, but they're just from somewhere else, like I can sort of like relate to that because like we both have different backgrounds, so like I can learn about theirs and stuff and like teach them about mine. So yeah, I think that's good.
Excellent. Yeah. And finally, Natalia, I know you have younger siblings also
Yes.
who are also biracial. So what would you pass down to them as they get, I know they're young, so as they get a little older, how would you help them to, you know, maneuver through the space of being a biracial or dual culture child?
Well, I would just I will try and like help them as much as I can, like just give them advice like in school and stuff, just like not let anyone like say anything to them, like even now
put them down,
so like even now like people have said a couple of things to them, even though they're still young and like in like P1 and all, like when people say things to them, I just like make sure they'll stand up for themselves and like not let anyone make them feel like they're any less. And like especially like sometimes my sister would think that like, oh, she's not as pretty as like the other like little children, like she would want to be like the white girls who have like straight hair, and I would tell her that no, like your skin's beautiful and your hair's beautiful, and I just hope that she'll like know that she's beautiful as well. And like because when I was younger I would also like used to like relax my hair, and that completely broke it off and it was completely damaged by the end, and then I just gave up doing that, and I hope that she'll like keep her natural curls so she doesn't ruin her hair sort of like I did. So
well done.
Excellent. Well done. Well, we thank you very much for joining us today.
You did a great job.
Yes,
thank you.
Just in wrapping up for our guests as well, just to let you know, you can get in contact with us on all our social media platforms. We can be found at UK on Mute across Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and on Spotify, iTunes, all your major podcast platforms as well. And don't forget us on YouTube. Please like, comment, subscribe, and follow us on all our platforms. Drop us comments about what you would like to discuss, things maybe that you have heard us discuss and you have some comments on that. Feel free to contact us. But that's it for another episode of UK on Mute. Thanks for joining us today. Bye-bye.
Here we go.
Bye. Bye.